All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday. Happy end of the first week of the new year. And I will be going ahead and taking this banner off. That is Second Chances, my original track that I uh, released back in April of last year. Hope to release a lot more tracks this year. Yeah, I'm excited about what's in the queue. But let me go ahead and take this off. You can find my track that you just heard on my website, Sound Engraver, as I usually say. And let's go ahead and just check the camera. The light feels a little weird. I always just feel like it's a little too bright, but that's just how it's going to be. So yeah, there we go. Got everything. 1 second, I just noticed one thing. There, better. All right. It's a surprise that I only noticed one thing, so I'll just look at the camera so I don't notice anything else in the picture here. But even before that, let me just go ahead and be distracted and see what you guys are doing. There we go. I hope you guys are doing well. Let's see who's in the chat, and then we'll talk about heroes and really what heroes should be. This I feel a rant coming on, but don't have high expectations. This will just be off the cuff, just my thoughts on heroes that have been written in the last 10 or so years in fiction, in books. I'm not talking about films, but in books, particularly sci-fi books, that are just they're just outright villainous. So we'll get into that, and they shouldn't be called heroes. That's what I'm going to be talking about mostly too, is the responsibility of the writer. I'm like, what were your intentions? Are you trying to make them? We'll get into that. I already feel stoked. All right, so Ghost Planet Max Inc. is first. Tells us that he'll see us soon. Ace is in the house also. He says, hello, Madame SEG. Yeah, I think, okay, Son of Beer. Yeah. Madame segment. No, you say stop also making the villain sympathetic as well. So yeah, that's we could touch on that because it's more or less the same thing. We actually might talk about that too on this stream. And of course, my wonderful Professor Geek says, my husband says, amen to that title. Can't wait to hear more. Yes, I'm excited. I'm pretty excited about this topic. It wasn't going to be the topic, but I didn't really have anything else to say. I have in mind another topic, but it's just going to take too much research. So I thought I would talk about this instead, which, I'm definitely feeling it. Stunning and brave. Oh, you changed your avatar. Let's see what you look like here. Oh, that's pretty sweet. That is pretty sweet. Yeah, these are great avatars. So Megatron, nice to see you. Brian Gilmartin is in the house. Nice to see you too. You say you've been worried about this kind of thing with heroes for a long time. Should be a great stream. I hope so. Studio Super, howdy to you too. I hope you are doing great and that the new year is going well for you. And Amy L. and Spidey Rules. Sorry, can't forget Spidey Rules. Good to see you. Good to have you in the chat. I know you're more of a Professor Geek fan, but hopefully I can offer some geekery involving stories. And welcome, Amy L. Thank you. Good to have you. Spidey Rule says it's ironic that the same people who are morally bankrupting our fiction are the same people who are morally grandstanding on Twitter about every istenphobe known to man. Well, yeah, but that's the thing is they really don't have morality. They have this false morality they're imposing themselves, they're ingratiating themselves with. So, and it's showing all over their fiction. Speed Racer is in the house as well. You'll try to be fair and balanced in my evaluation of how heroes are vilified in fiction. On the other hand, heroes without flaws are, with some exception, not engaging characters. Well, and I don't want to say heroes with flaws. I'm talking about heroes who would out like heroes, like people who put in a book, like this is my hero for my compelling space saga or whatever. They'll write out like this main protagonist is a hero. And I'm not talking about flaws. Like you can have a villain, or excuse me, you can have a hero who is maybe at the front, at the start of the story, or even toward the middle of the story, is selfish and wants to, um, he knows what's right, he knows what he has to do, but then like his selfishness will cause him to avoid what is doing right for a long time. But you see that, you still see the good in him. I'm talking about people who are doing outright villainous things. When I say that, I mean I would expect the villain to do that action, not the hero. Not even a gray on the gray side, or the, you know how we have black and white and there's a little bit of gray area with featured characters. And maybe the rogue will do something questionable. I mean, even someone who is good, as a character, as a protagonist, like Jack O'Neill from Stargate. There are times, like there very few times, but there are times he just outright, it's his fiery nature, where he will try to overthrow and punch someone's lights out, for doing, for a villain doing a heinous act, or heinous. I said heinous. But you know what I mean. So I mean, there are even good characters who will fall, and his friends will have to pull him out of his morally questionable thing. But we see him backtrack. We see him even in the moment of absolute anger, over something or over someone. We see him pull away from the act he's about to commit, or his friends helping him pull away. And so there can be complex characters. There can be heroes who will have flaws, but you know that they're not villains. And so we're going to talk about heroes, people, I should say characters, who are written out as heroes. Like the author says, hey, this is supposed to be the hero of my saga. And even at the starting point, it's like, oh, really? Your foundation is really bad. And let me actually just say before I forget, because I know I can, this stream is not to deny the anti-hero or deny the tragic hero, like someone who starts out as a hero and then falls to tragedy, to some kind of flaw, or a detrimental flaw, or some vice. So, for instance, in the Bible, Samson, he starts out as really a hero of the Israeli people, the Israelites. But then his lust gets the better of him. He is, the femme fatale, if you will, Delilah. Is that her name? I think so. Samson and Delilah. Yeah, that's her name. She seduces him. Now she doesn't win on many accounts, but at the end, he gives over his strength to this wicked woman. She betrays him. He falls, and then he ends up killing all his enemies. But the tragedy of his story is in killing the Philistines, he kills himself too in the last action of heroism. And so it's a tragedy. And so heroes do fall. But I just want to say, I'm not talking about the tragic hero. I'm not talking about the anti-hero. I am specifically talking about heroes that the writers say to you, the reader, hey, this is your hero of the story. This is the hero who is going to attain virtue. And he's, the hero as we understand. I had to look this up right before the stream to remember, but the virtues of the hero are prudence, justice, fortitude, which is courage, and temperance, which is more of a person who is self-controlled, who does not give into rage. So that's what I want to say. Whatever I say going forward with this stream, this is not something that is declining or shunning the anti-hero or the tragic hero. Those heroes have their place in fiction. I'm also not saying we shouldn't have morally gray characters in fiction. And if you want the character to be the leading figure of your story, make it evident. Tell the reader, okay, this person here, he's got some problems, he's got some issues. Let's see if he overcomes those issues, but make it crystal clear in the narrative. What I don't appreciate as a reader is you're drumming up this character who should be a leader of the people, someone who is better than his enemies, someone who is very different and the opposite of his enemies. Like, you can't be drumming up this character and then say, oh, well, you know what? Actually, to overthrow his enemies, he has to be like them, you know? So now all this to say is the work of art that I'm describing here is the science fiction. I guess you would call it young adult. I could see it being a young adult piece of fiction. And that's the Red Rising series. I decided to listen to it a second time after 8 years. I read it 8 years ago, and then I thought, I wonder if my memory of it holds up. And listening to it, it's like, oh, I remembered it, you know, tanking in quality as far as the writing is concerned. But then I also have picked up things I didn't even consider before when I was just reading it. So, and that is setting up this young man who's supposed to be a hero and a leader of the people, and he does or says even odious things. And I don't care if he has 5 more books to establish his arc. If he starts out that way, I'm sorry, he's not supposed to be a virtuous hero. Now, if he's going to fall, if there's tragedy in his trying to overthrow this wicked, you know, caste system, okay, if there's tragedy and he does fall in the end, okay, that makes sense because that's where the trajectory is going. He's a terribly flawed human being. And people might come at me and say, oh no, he's only 16 or 17. It's like, no, he should know that he's doing wrong things. So I'll get into the specifics, but not fully fleshed, because I do plan on doing a complete analysis of the book, and I'll post it this February. But before I go further, Daniel Heron, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate you. And I got your email, and I do thank you for that. Like, keeping Daniel sent me. I think it's a classical music YouTuber who's doing an art collaboration. I will say though, not just to you, Daniel, just in general. I get very intrigued by collaborations, especially when it's like legitimate YouTubers and stuff. But I've had a number of collaborations over the past where I've said yes to, and I've said no to for different reasons. And I will say artistic collaborations, at least for me, I'm not saying this for anyone else, but at least for me, they don't pay off. There's really no payoff, and it's because of this. Actually, I have a lot of projects in the queue for what I want to do personally, and even professional collaborations. I've noticed when I lose the time to work on my other stuff, I actually get a sense of restlessness. I've not done professional collaborations, like you know, let's say a major comic book artist or graphic novel artist who has a following says, hey, I'll pay you this flat rate and then this rate to do music for a visual novel I want to do. I haven't done something like that. And I'd be open to it depending on the project and depending on the person. But outside of that, I just, now that I don't have 2 jobs, now that I just have my teaching job, I really want to use the spare time and see how much music I can release, and actually how much fiction I can work on in that stint. But thank you, Daniel, for looking out for me on that. And I don't mind people emailing me, say, hey, you know, did you hear about this collaboration? And it might be something I'm interested in. But I know that was a little bit long. Studio Super, thank you so much for the super chat. Let's see. You say, reminds me of the creators of Kingdom Come. That's comic book. Isn't that Batman? Sorry, I should know that. Encountering this thought, like, these anti-heroes are complex with moral ambiguity. No, you just killed an innocent security guard. Nothing morally ambiguous about it. Oh my gosh, you hit the nail on the head. You said it so succinctly. I kind of want to talk about that a little bit more. That's actually another thing I want to talk about within this stream, is that people who write out these morally complex characters, you know, these people who are supposed to be heroes but are facing moral quandary after moral quandary. I am not against moral quandaries, by the way. That's kind of hard to say. Moral quandaries. I'm not against those. I like a moral quandary from time to time. I like I do like a good person wrestling and questioning the morality of the situation. I think that that's fair. I think there's room for that in fiction. Um, but and this is a pure oh man, it's not just Hollywood or anything. This is an academic thing too. People have this misconception that the more complex the character is, morally speaking, the more engaging or the more interesting that character is. Inversely or conversely, they might think, well, if someone is so simply good, there's no interest involved. There's nothing engaging involved. And we know that, that's not true. Star Wars EU is chock full of people who are good people, good users of the Force, who face very trying situations that will test their goodness almost at every turn, depending on how the book is written, and they still overcome. But they are confronted with very interesting situations, and they're more interesting for it, for their morally upright decisions. The Arkham games, with Batman, I love some of the things that Batman runs into. I can't remember the exact character. Prof would know, but he's in a cellar. Who's that? Is it Hush, or who's the or is it Clayface? I can't remember which of the villains, but he's pretending to be an officer, a security guard. Batman knows, I think it is Clayface. Batman knows it's Clayface. And then he runs in, and then on top of that, he runs into other legitimate security guards who don't believe they'll get out of the situation. And even as a person viewing this, I don't play these Batman games, but I love watching my prof play them. And even me looking at a situation, I think, okay, yeah, I mean, I don't see how they can get out of the situation. And what does Batman say? He says there's always a way out. And when you work with that line, when you work with that theme, you actually find yourself in a situation as a writer, you have to be extra smart as a writer. You have to be extra clever on, okay, the situation looks dire. Maybe it looks desperate. Maybe some people are actually despairing. But then at the same time, it's like, um, no, I gotta actually figure it out. Like, you almost have to be like Sherlock Holmes. You gotta figure out all the external factors that no one else would consider as a writer and as a reader. That's what makes Batman so interesting. He always thinks there's going to be a way out. The same thing, I remember Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Phil Coulson, one of the first antagonists, who he becomes Deathlock later. And he has a son he wants to protect, but he's very volatile in his inhuman nature. And you kind of want, like, this is bad, but for the safety of everyone else, including the man's son, you kind of want to take him down. Like, there's part of you who's like, he's just too volatile a person. You kind of want to take him down. And Phil Coulson, you know what he says? He says, we're getting out of the situation where the boy has his father. And it seems like a drastic situation. It's like, there's no way we can contain the situation without taking him down. Like, you see it on the faces of Fitz and Gemma, and then you see it, you kind of see it on all the other teams' faces. But Phil Coulson says, we're coming out of the situation with the child with his father. And then it's like, okay, that's the situation. So how are the writers going to do it? That's what makes it so interesting. Is Phil Coulson, out of the goodness of his heart, he wants to protect people from this volatile man who doesn't know how to control his powers. Well, he sort of does, but he's pursued by wicked people, so people can test him and experiment with him and stuff, and see how valuable he is. They kind of, there's bad influence, and then there's Phil Coulson, who's a good influence. And so it's up to the writers to see, okay, how will this extremely powerful, extremely dangerous man handle the situation to get his son back? He wants his son, but he knows he's too dangerous to even be within proximity of his son. And then that's what creates his heartache and his volatile nature. Now later we see that he becomes very controlled in his powers. He becomes Deathlock. Um, but it's not without Phil Coulson saying we're going to get out of the situation. And that's kind of where I want to complain about writers, especially young writers. I kind of encourage people to kind of work their craft until they're into 30 and 40 years old, because it's like, I get it with young writers. They kind of want to just say, let's cause this complex, morally complex character. Oh, sorry, he had no choice, guys. He had no choice. So we'll talk about that. So let's see, let's kind of see a little bit into the chat before we get into more of that. 1 second. 1 second. I'm still here. Just wanted to arrange something with my desk. Let's see. Cindy and Brave Megatron says about his avatar, I decided to be more modest. It looks good. I love purple. There's a mysterious edged purple. It looks like Megatron, but Voltron too, you know. That's great. Punk Moth. Sitting in my lawn chair, you say, with some popcorn in hand, this would be a good topic tonight. Well, I appreciate that. The fact that someone would just relax to a bowl of popcorn and listen to me, that's awesome. I feel so I'm flattered. I take that as a compliment. Spidey Rule says your description of a flawed hero is a origin story. Yes. Yeah, heroes can have flaws. They can have moral setbacks, but there's a difference between, oh man, you doing something knowing it's wrong, and then you do a course, you do an action that you take back saying, I shouldn't have done that. And some writers, amateur writers, will play with that idea, saying, well, yeah, he had to kill this person. The person was going to kill him for this item, so he had to kill. But instead of that situation, if you really hate yourself for killing a person you like, why don't you work with something else instead of brute force? Why don't you work with reason? Why don't you work with diplomacy? Why don't you work with cleverness? You know, it's like, no, he had it. No, we'll talk about it. I promise. All right, Andreas Hernandez, welcome. Eldritch Fan, welcome too. You say you're interested in the Fourth Age channel. Great channel. He emphasizes the difference between power and empowerment. Oh my gosh, yes, and it's a very important distinction. It's a belief that characters are just heroes by designation. Yeah, interestingly put. Studio Super says, I always thought temperance was the virtue that made sure none of the other virtues override each other. Otherwise, it goes into hubris. You know, you might actually have a better understanding of the heroic virtues than I do. But I think with at least the Christian theology, I think someone might want to correct me on this, but I think temperance is more self-control. You know, tame the rage. Or is it humility? So if you guys want to put in the comments what temperance is, I might have a more vague understanding of what temperance is. Brian Gilmartin says what you're essentially talking about is the colloquially referred to as the designated hero. Thank you. Someone who is only a hero because the author says so, not because of their actions. See, I didn't even know there was a term. I'm going to look up that term sometime after the stream. You know, later this month, I will be doing recordings of different commentary, and this book will be one of those pieces of commentary. And I think designated hero is something I need to look at, because he's not following the Plato or Platonic, or if that's the right word, or even the Christian version of what a hero is. Yeah, the author says he is your hero, and it's like, but he's not doing heroic stuff. But he's going to overthrow the bad guys. Yeah, by being a bad guy himself. But that's what makes it interesting. No, you make the hero more interesting by getting out of the situation. I like how I'm kind of talking about it already through the chat, like in between the comments without even going specific. You guys understand though. You guys understand. Oh, Spidey Rules wants to correct me. Kingdom Come isn't just Batman, it's the DC heroes in general with the Trinity in the forefront. Oh, okay. I did not know that. I don't know why I thought it was like a run of issues. Let's see. Elias Jones, welcome. I'm reminded of the picnic face skit. I'm not familiar with that, called The Button. You press the button, someone somewhere will die, and the guy solves the moral quandary. Oh boy, that's good. That's good. Yeah, like someone's death, and I will talk about this so much. This particular author, Pierce Brown, he uses death in a way that's supposed to evoke or provoke, rather, drama. And it does to an extent, but actually some of his twice now actually he's used tragedy involving death that actually is unnecessary. The first death, which originally I thought was really tragic because it involves the hero's, I'll just say protagonist, because so far he's not a hero in my book. He involves the wife's death. And it's supposed to stir in him the need to rise to the cause. And I'll talk about the absolute evil use of this wife's death in another video, because it's just too much to analyze now. But it is straight up abominable. Pierce Brown wrote this death, and the more I read, the more I listened to his narrative, I understood just the absolute moral bankruptcy involving this martyrdom. It's not a pure martyrdom. It's actually very wickedly motivated. Well, anyway, so the death is supposed to provoke the protagonist to say, well, I'm going to rise to the cause now. Actually, he actually doesn't. I gotta talk about this. Her death actually doesn't provoke the rise to usurp the evil caste system that killed his wife. He actually becomes suicidal. And he actually is hung for his actions. Like he's about to be hung, actually, rather, for his actions involving his wife, who died because she was rebelling. But then people save him. He's actually buried in the ground, and for some reason they dig him up. He realizes he's alive, but before he dies, before he's believed to be hung, he believes himself he's going to be hung. They sort of hang him, but it's a farce. They dig him up, and then I realized it's like, oh my gosh, he was suicidal. He wasn't even going to rise to the cause. So her death was actually unnecessary. He rises to the cause when he sees the world for what it is, with another character showing him the truth. Once that character shows him the truth, he's ready. He's ready to take on the world. And so the previous death was unnecessary. So the motives are wrong. He's actually suicidal. I'm sorry, when a character is suicidal, that's a foundation that's not really a hero. He has to see later. I mean, yes, you could. Yes, you could. You can overcome your suicidal thoughts and become a hero. But it really did not send me as far as character motivation. He really should have just had the drive to begin with, because, to be honest, in the beginning of the narrative, like in the first couple of chapters, he calls himself his father's son. His father was hung for civil disobedience. And so I'm like, okay, he's his father's son, so he's going to take charge. Nope. He has to have his wife die so he can feel motivated, but then he's suicidal. People hang him, but it's a farce, just to, get it past the other guys guarding, like, okay, is he hung or not? He's buried. People dig him up with some, I guess he survived with some sedative or whatever. And then they say, you need to be great. He has no cause in himself to be great until like chapters later. He's like, we have to, you're special. You know how to get out of the situation. Apparently not, though, because he has to kill another guy to get out of a situation. And so he's awful. He's just not a human being. So, Studio Super, thank you so much again for your second super chat. Good difference between hero and villain. A villain doesn't believe in choice and free will. They believe in life circumstances and being a passenger to it. I think that is true. Here, the hero believes in choice and chooses right. The hero always chooses right, no matter what the situation is. And if people think, well, concerning Pierce Brown with his protagonist Darrow, he's like, or Darrow, I think is how you pronounce his name. He's like, but he had no choice. He had no choice but to kill this person. It's like, it's because the writer put him in that perspective. Now, if I want him to be a hero, let's say I was writing this character. If I want him to be a hero, he would get out of that situation alive with the other guy. He would reason with the other guy and say, let's get out together. This is what distinguishes us from the other people who are going through the same trial. Like it's like the rite of passage. It's not even a rite of passage. It's called the passage. And like 100 people who are like the top of the world, top tier of the world, and athletes and intellect, they're put two in a room by force, and only one person comes out alive. It's like, okay, so you have to kill him. You're following their line of code, these wicked people's line of code. You have to kill him to be at the top. And so you have to be at the top of the chain to overthrow the system. And so the foundation of this character, this hero, he's like, I've got to infiltrate the wicked system. But in order to do that, I have to proceed with their line of code, this wicked line of code. And so you're right. Like the good, if he is a hero, he would choose to do the opposite. Even if he's in the situation of following the line of code, he would do the opposite. He would look around his room, look around the settings, and say, okay, let's pretend he says to the guy, let's pretend you do kill me. Let's make it look like you do kill me. I know how to look dead. Beat me. Maybe he'll put himself under physical pain and brokenness to make the other people, the bad guys, believe he is dead, that the other guy did kill him. But the two of them know that he's not dead. And maybe the other guy takes a beating. Maybe the other guy tries to make it like, okay, I'll accept this. We're going to hurt each other, but we're not going to kill each other. I mean, it's still brutal, but at least it's still, in a way, honoring the sanctity of life. It's like, okay, you make me look dead. I'll take the bigger beating, and then we'll get out of this together. And then the writer can work to make the situation where he escapes or he outwitted them. And that's what the evil caste system wants anyway. They want the best and brightest anyway. Maybe he proves to them, I've outwitted you by thinking you thought that this guy killed me or something. I mean, there's so many ways to be very clever about the situation. But no, he had no choice. He's like, I don't want to. He actually says that. He's like, I don't want to do this to you. I don't want to do this to you. The guy protests. He's like, I have to have this. I need to kill you. And then in his internal thoughts, he's like, I'm willing to sacrifice myself, my life, and then this man's life. I'm willing to sacrifice this man's life for Ao's dream, or Eo's dream, his wife's dream. It's like, that's wrong. So wrong. He's willing to sacrifice other lives to get to the top. And that's the foundation. How can you not go from there? Like, that's the first violent act he commits to get to the top of the chain. It's like, no. That's awful. It's awful. Anyway. New person, Liwa. I hope I'm pronouncing your name. Welcome. You say, it's why I respect the values of the characters like Superman, who is constantly told he can't save everyone and stops the bad guy he has to compromise his values and kill, and he constantly refuses. Well, are you saying the bad guy tells him he has to compromise and he refuses to compromise? Yeah, that's true. Like, you don't compromise your values. You find a way out. And at the very least, at the very least, you can die trying. But because the protagonist has to live for the next 5 books or whatever, you have to find another way. It's kinda like Professor Geek. He my wonderful prof, and this he's absolutely right about this. If you can't write a story where Superman doesn't kill, you can't write a Superman story. And it actually takes a level of intuition and genius to circumvent the situation. Okay, this is a dire situation. How can Superman make it out, and how can people make it out without him directly killing someone? And some people say, "Oh, he had no choice. He had to kill that monster. He had to kill." It doesn't make it's not realistic that he can't kill that wicked demigod or whatever. It's like, there's always a way. There's always a way. You're the writer. Do better. Pierce Brown, you were 26. I understand that's a young age. You were 26 when you released that first book, but you could have done better. But he's well loved. He's got his he's probably gonna have a film adaptation with the Red Rising series, and he'll get what he wants, and I guess that's what it is. Brian Gilmartin says, "Heroes can have flaws, but there's a limit to how flawed a hero can be before those flaws actually make him less believable than the pure good heroes." Well, because villains have flaws. And if villains follow those flaws to the point of degeneracy, that's the distinction. I mean, notice with Batman, especially I think the Batman games just draw this out so beautifully. They really they mark the villains as pretty much what Batman or what Bruce Wayne could have been. Because the situation between like, okay, like something like the Riddler. So Batman and the Riddler. Batman is a detective with cream of the crop deduction skills. The Riddler understands this. But what distinguishes him from Batman is pure hubris. He just wants to be the best in intellect. And he'll go to sadistic lengths to prove that point. But it's sheer hubris. If the Riddler didn't have that hubris and he wasn't a villain for that flaw, he probably could be a wonderful ally for Batman. But it's hubris, like the intellect is pretty much the same. Batman is just a little bit above the Riddler, but sometimes the Riddler just has these predicaments. He causes these predicaments for Batman. But the thing that distinguishes Batman from the Riddler, obviously the Riddler becomes prideful and therefore a villain, is just that element of hubris. Batman has no hubris, or he wouldn't be Batman. So yeah. All right. Andres says Zane Carrick, the protagonist of the Coda. Oh, maybe I should. Oh, I guess you're not spoiling anything. Zane Carrick was willing to warn the Mandalorians about a deadly disease that can affect a lot of people, especially during the Mandalorian Wars. His reason for warning the Mandalorians was because you're people. Exactly. Yeah, like the easy way out is, well, we should just leave them to their world or their traditions or their culture or something like that. But it's like, well, let's just at least warn them. Stargate actually really touches on that. Like even people, like they'll try to evacuate a village of people where the situation is dire, the planet's not going to make it, and they'll offer that kind of refugee maneuver. And sometimes villagers will go to the Stargate. But for major religious beliefs, some people won't. And they can't change their beliefs. So they try people to come. This is a dangerous thing. This is not your God working against you. This is a phenomena happening with the sun right now. And the villagers may choose to forgo that and say, no, we'll stay here. We believe it's the gods, And then that's when the Stargate members hold their peace. And then maybe some divine intervention by the Asgardians, happen and stuff. But, yeah, they try their very best, even when people disagree with them or they have different cultural beliefs or ways or something, or traditions that are even antithetical to the Stargate community. They'll try to help those people out before the natural disaster happens or whatever. All right, Megatron, see you later. But I hope you, yeah, thank you for coming. Hopefully you have a good day at work tomorrow or work today. Yeah, see you later. Spidey Rule says hack writers just want to put their main characters in morally complex situations without thinking. Yeah, that's another thing too. Is like if you're going to put a character in a morally complex situation, make it very good in the writing. Like make it so good, and that takes time. Sometimes that takes weeks, months, days, whatever, for you to get that scenario down right. Yeah, they assume the situation itself is enough and don't care about the character's response. Yeah, silly. Elias Jones says temperance, justice, courage, prudence, faith, hope, and love are the virtues of the seven virtues, which is more of the Catholic virtues, the saintly virtues. Elias also says another are the lively virtues in opposition to deadly sins. Yeah, humility, diligence, charity, temperance. That's okay. There's a lot. There's a lot. Samuel Proctor is in. I'd argue it's still interesting, just not heroic. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like it's interesting, but don't spell it out like it's being heroic. Yeah. Eldritch Fan might be saying something about the EU that I don't know about, so I'll leave his comments without reading them because I kind of want to still. I might still know. Dig Outlaw is in. Welcome. Oh, I actually do want to shout out Adega Outlaw. I had come upon he does science fiction and dark fantasy, and I don't read some of those works. Just the level of interest in the topic or the scenario. I said, oh yeah, I like that. But he did actually recently. Well, no, I think this was a 2-year-old video, Adega Outlaw, if I remember correctly. But there's a novel he's working on that the concept, he has a video. He's like a 7.5-minute video concept that I think he's in the process of publishing within the year or so. And it's called The Reach. And the premise is very interesting. So check out Adega Outlaw's channel just in general. He's actually, he reads wonderfully his text. And you might even find something that you like his dark fantasy. Dark fantasy, man. I just well, anyway, I'm interested in seeing what The Reach is about. That the premise sounds very interesting. So that's what it's called. At least I think that's the first book of the trilogy. So check out his channel. He also does, I think he do readings of your dark fantasy as well, which is great. Big Al presents. I'm so sad that you are late. Just taking down some Christmas decorations. Yeah, that's I think that's going to be our week into the next week. Yeah. That makes sense. So, Elias Jones says, seven lively virtues: chastity, temperance, charity, diligence, patience, kindness, and humility. Yeah, good. The 7 are the other set of 7 is better in my humble opinion. Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot. Eldritch Fan, thank you so much. You say having to become even worse than the bad guy to beat them is a good way to write a villain's origin story. Yeah. P.S. YA fiction is messed up and is made up by sickos. I don't read YA, but I think this is YA. So I guess I am reading Red Rising, but I'm not reading the series. I'm just reading the first book. I just wanted to. I'm rereading it or listening to it because I wanted to see if I remembered that correctly, and I do remember it. And I remember it not being that great, but now I have better explanations. But more, I don't read bad fiction on purpose. This is the reason why I'm bringing up Red Rising is, the moral depravity of heroes. I think that's actually a really important thing to make as far as a statement. I don't think a lot of channels are saying as much, where where the author, who is famous now, you know, this is I think he's on book 6 or whatever. I think he released this like between 8 and 10 years ago. And people do say, and he says as much in his work, he's like, this is a hero I'm writing. And then the readers are saying, oh, yes, this is a hero going through stuff. It's like, no, this is not a hero. You can call him an anti-hero, or you can call him, he is more of an anti-hero, if you're being honest. But I'll kind of I'll lay out a few scenarios where it's like, ooh, I expect, like, when you say Eldritch fan, when you say a villain's origin story, there are like there are two things that happen in the book. One thing he does, one thing he says, and one thing he thinks. And I'm like, this is straight up the the layout of a villain story. This is like Sheev no, not Sheev. That was Disney. Disney Palpatine. Palpatine never has his to my knowledge, he never has his first name until Disney. So he's not Sheev. He's just Palpatine. Palpatine with Darth Plagueis, perfect setup for his villainy. I don't think you could have done a better backstory for Palpatine than what we got with Darth Plagueis. And it's not really extensive. You don't really go into his emotions per se, but it's like, yeah, yeah, that's what that's what a villain is going to do to me, to be a major bad guy. So, you know, when he first commits his odious act, his first real major bad act, Plagueis is still higher than him in power and also in villainy. But Palpatine is so on his way. And so for this protagonist, Darrow, however you pronounce his name, there are two instances. I'll just lay out these instances. They will be in my analysis video coming this February, but I might as well just lay it out here. There's one moment in the book where basically, to usurp this evil caste system, he has to become a different person. It's a wicked caste system of colors. So basically, I won't go through all the colors, but the gold is the supreme race of humans. Like they're the supreme color. So they have gold hair, gold eyes, their skin is flawless. And then the bottom of the barrel, like absolute slavery, is the reds. People with red hair, maybe ruddy skin, dirty skin, because they're working in the mines of Mars that takes place on Mars. And they have red eyes. So red hair, red eyes. And so to usurp the system, or usurp the leaders of the system, rather, this red, Darrow, has to become a gold. And so he's physically going through every single alteration that you can imagine with surgery. Not just with hair and eye color and skin color, different eyes, different bone structure, different bone density, different muscles, different tissue. He's becoming a completely different human being. In a way, I really, just personally as a writer, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. By the way, when you actually alter pretty much everything physiologically, that is like pretty much the structural DNA of the original person. I mean, it's kind of like cloning in a way, but just changing the appearance of this hero. So he, through like months of surgery, months of recovery, training, exercise, he's no longer red. He becomes a gold. And this artist, this carver character, his name is Mickey. He's a violet. So the violets in the world are artists, and they're pretty decadent as a race of colors, if you will. They're artists. They have a lot of pleasure slaves. They like to make girls dance and stuff like that. And so he has one of his pleasure slaves kind of clean Darrow up and stuff like that, make sure he's looking good and stuff. And then Darrow wants to tell her that in a kind way, that she's beautiful, but she's, she's very scared and stuff. She doesn't talk, she doesn't smile, she just does what she's told. And at the end of that stint of his life, his surgery and his recovery, he's going off to the institute to get tested to be a it's called the peerless scarred, the cream of the crop of the gold people. So he leaves Mickey, and Mickey is not a decent human being. He's kind of a loathsome creature, but he's still a person. And the pleasure slave that helped Darrow, her name is Evie, and he says in this, whew, the reader kind of made it really odious, kind of insidious, but the reader who I listened to, who voices Darrow, he says to Mickey, Darrow says to Mickey, "You be good to her, Mickey. You don't make her dance. If I find that you do, I will rip your hands off." And he says it in a really vile, sinister way. Two big issues I have with that. He's supposed to be the hero, but he and Mickey knows that he is superhuman. He has superhuman strength. He is so much stronger than Mickey. Mickey would be absolutely defenseless, powerless against this new body that he's created, almost like a Frankenstein creature. Like, I'm scared of what I've made. And Darrow knows the fear in Mickey's eyes. He knows the fear that he's created this superhuman, powerful monster that is the gold, that is the most, the strongest of all the colors. Mickey is afraid, and Darrow knows that he's afraid, and he plays on his fear. I will rip your hands off if I know you're making Evie dance for you. Now, so he plays on Mickey's fear. Even though Mickey's not a decent human being, he's playing on this man's fear. And he really makes Mickey afraid. But even more so, he says, "I will rip your hands off." That to me is absolutely loathsome for a couple of reasons. First, it's maiming someone, and maiming anyone on purpose is just awful. It's so cruel. It's so wicked. You do that on purpose. Don't do that. Like, as characters, not as me talking to you, but absolutely loathsome. The maiming itself is loathsome, but even more specifically, ripping the hands off of this man who is an artist, who is a carver, making people different, by, being commissioned to do that or whatever, like these weird jobs, but he's still an artist. You're inhibiting that. So Darrow wants to physically torture Mickey if he abuses Evie by ripping his hands off the artist, so prohibiting the artist from doing his work. He's a genius. This man Mickey is a genius for what he does. And Darrow says, "I'm going to play on your fears, and I'm going to rip your hands off if you're mean to this girl." This is abominable, in my opinion. First of all, Mickey made him for who he is, the superhuman strength with the superhuman gold. So now the monster's turning on him and saying, I'll hurt you. I'll hurt you badly if you hurt this girl." That threat is what a villain would do. There's no encouragement. It's cold. It's calculating. It's a threat. It's not to encourage Mickey to live a better life. It's not to encourage saying, "Mickey, don't do this to Evie." Just say that. Just say, "Don't do this to Evie. Be good to her. Be good to all your pleasure slaves," or whatever, without the threat. But no, he's like, I know you're an artist, and I know the good work you can do, the good work you've made me as, but even still, I have the power to rip your hands off. It's like, okay, that's a villain. That is as Eldritch Fan points out, that is an origin story for a villain. It's not any overcoming all odds as a hero. It's threatening the weak with the person knowing he's weaker than him. with him knowing he's weak, or with the reader knowing that this person has no chance, he is completely powerless, completely defenseless against this new creation. That's a villain. That's ugly. So that was the first incident. Well, major incident. Like there are others too, but then the next incident was something he was thinking. One second. The second incident that just thought like, okay, you're still a villain, is that he's recruited. He's one of 100 youths, golden youths who passed the test and with flying colors, and or at least made one mistake or whatever. And he's in this room. I mean, it's a cool room. I'll give it to Pierce Brown for doing a lot of great world building, but it goes no further than that. He's in this room full of like 100 cream of the crop students who are going to be the Peerless Guard, or hope to be. And then all these adjudicators, all these representatives of these houses, because it has to be Hunger Games, it has to be Harry Potter, it has to be Game of Thrones, these houses and stuff. The best representatives, like I think it's like 12, it's like a representative for 12 houses. And Darrow, in this situation, he looks around, he's like, this is cream of the crop of the golds. If I had known where I was going to be, this is his internal dialogue. If I had known where I was going to be, I would have brought a nuke. Or maybe, okay, I'll be kind to Pierce Brown. He says I might have brought a nuke. So he wants to blow people up without. It sounds like without remorse. He's like, well, this is perfect. I'll blow up all of these people, including myself, to prevent people from, ascending to ultimate supremacy or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure these people who are in the same room with you are not good people. But that was kind of sadistic in my view as well. Very irrational. And that's the thing too. And I'll close with this before going into the comments. In the book, Pierce Brown has Darrow have this heightened mental ability, even as a red, even before he becomes a gold. And he does a couple of mind games. And I don't know if it's going to be developed in this book. I would hope to goodness that it's developed in the subsequent books. I'm not going to read the books. But if he's so smart to get out of there's this card game that he actually outwits one of the mentors, one of his mentors. And he outwits him. He knows the scenario of this card trick. It's not a simple scenario, and he outwits. Actually, pretty cleverly, he outwits the mentor. And I'm thinking, use that, Pierce Brown. Use that for getting out of a dire situation without killing people. So far, Pierce Brown didn't do it. So far, like if he's so mentally agile, he can get out of even a dire situation, get out of it alive with other people alive. But he didn't. So, and I think it's honestly, guys, and don't take this the wrong way, because I was such a writer probably myself when I was 26 years old. But when you actually live some life, like when you have some life behind you, I'm still fairly young. 37 in a couple of months. That's still young. You start knowing things. You start absorbing things. And I think if Pierce Brown waited for 10 years or so and hopefully got some more life behind him, some more understanding of heroes and villains, he might have used his, Darrow's wits, his mental skill to get out of a situation instead of, oh, they're trapped in a room, only one comes out alive, I have to kill this person. Like, okay, well, you're not a hero. And so that's the moral of the stream, guys. That's the moral of the story, is that if you're going to write heroes, you better be crystal clear with the reader that this is a hero. And if this person is not a hero, make it crystal clear that it's an anti-hero or a tragic fallen hero. Like someone who maybe is a hero and then ends in tragedy. There's room for literature in that. But if you're trying to do the ultimate space saga, with a hero conquering the villains, don't put in your blurb, and I don't know if it's in his blurb, but it's pretty much the premise of the book. Don't become the enemy you seek to destroy. It's like, oh, to outwit the golds, he has to become a gold mind, body, and spirit and become a villain himself to usurp the other villains. It's like, but he's still a hero. No, he's not a hero. He's not a hero. All right, one second. All right. Let's continue on with the chat. Oh, Studio Super, thank you. Thank you for your super chat. Comic I recommend is Superman Maximum Carnage. Not a perfect story, but its themes of pushing morality to the limit, yet having sheer optimism. Foundation of a comic superhero comes out on top. I will, Studio Super, thank you for the recommendation, but you know who I go to ultimately for recommendations is my husband. And not because he's my husband, it's because he's Professor Geek. And the thing is, he's the walking aspirational hero. He really is aspirational. He's a good man. He is my Captain America. Let's see. Studio Super says, sounds like Farquaad. I'm not actually, wait. So familiar. Some of you may die, but that is a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Why does that name sound familiar? I feel like he's a common reference. Brian says people may compromise their morals. Who compromise their morals are not heroes; they're hypocrites. You're welcome, Adiga Allah. Glad to make the mention. Yeah, I'll take a look at that novel once it's published. Team Oz, welcome. You say, I'm here, lurking, trying to write a book. I want all my characters, bar one mad dog villain, to be justified in their minds. Steampunk fantasy, bordering noble, bright, that gets dark. Yeah, that's an interesting premise. I would just say, like, whatever that premise is, it kind of sounds like you're more edgy with your heroism. I would just say, like, let the viewers and the readers know exactly what you want your protagonist to be. That's the thing is, I know I'm beating a dead horse with this statement. I just can't help it though. I'm just gonna say it's like what grinds my gears about Red Rising is that he's trying to write Darrow in a way where it's like no guys, Darrow is a hero overcoming these things. It's like no. I'm fine with flaws. But like when you do bad things, oh, that's the other thing. And I'm going to point this out. His mentor figure. Okay. Well, I won't drum up this scenario. Basically, his mentor figure, and I'm sorry, this is almost verbatim. His mentor says, Darrow, you're a good man who has to do bad things. It's like, then he's not a good man. It's like when Captain America, he's talking to the Doctor in the first Avenger film, and I'm gonna botch the scenario. Professor Geek has it down, but basically the Doctor, before Steve Rogers gets this super soldier serum, he's like, "Don't ever change." The Doctor says, "Don't ever change because why? You're a good man. You're a good man." The Doctor doesn't say, okay, you're going to have the superhuman strength by tomorrow, by the next day. Just be a good soldier. Just do what you're told, be a good soldier. Or if you have to do bad things to save the war, that's good too. No, the Doctor doesn't say that. The Doctor says, don't ever change, you're a good man. And this mentor of Darrow says, you're a good man who has to do bad things. It's like, you're a good man because you do good things. You're not a good person if you do bad things, especially if you know it's bad. It's like it's one thing if you do a bad thing, a wrong thing, and then a couple days later or whatever. It's like, oh, it's like, you know what? I should not have done that. That was wrong of me to do that. But you didn't go into the action knowing it's bad. But if you go into the action knowing it's bad, you're a bad person. I'm sorry, it's as simple as that. You're a bad person. You can become a good person, but maybe all the Red Rising defenders will say, "No, he becomes good later. He just has to kill to know it's bad." And he does something after killing the other man in that room, and he's a young man, and he's also a likable man too. He's a likable young man. Um, After he kills him, Pierce Brown writes him that he's cradling his head, and I found that absolutely disturbing. He's like, "No, he's full of remorse." He's like, "No, he was willing to sacrifice this man for his own end." And then he cradles his head saying, "I shouldn't have killed him." No, he doesn't say actually, he doesn't say that. He doesn't internalize that. He says, "I hate myself." I'm like, "Yeah, because 'cause you're a villain." Villains can hate themselves, by the way. Villains can have self-loathing. Self-loathing is not a virtue. I hate that. I hate that about our culture now. It's like, like the whole self-care industry is always targets people with self-loathing. It's like, "No, you should be good to yourself. You're you're just too hard on yourself." It's like, "No, I hate myself. I don't like myself. I wish I was different." It's like, "Then change. Change something about yourself. Pray about it. Work at it." It's a workout. If there's something you hate about yourself, work to do the thing that you need to overcome. Don't embrace it. I hate this embracing self-loathing thing. Self-loathing is not a virtue. And Pierce Brown was trying to write in this with Darrow. He's like, "I hate myself." Here's someone outside the door. Um, all right, continuing on. Let's see. Oh, Eldritch Fan says, it's not a spoiler. Leia, sorry, has survivor's guilt from all around, but she doesn't let it cripple her. Yeah, and survivor's guilt is a real thing. I think survivor's guilt actually is a very good thing for a character to overcome. There was a piece of fiction I just recently read. Oh yeah, Gateway from Frederick Pohl. Wonderful example of survivor's guilt, like on steroids. Oh my gosh. He's a very vulgar, very indecent human being, but oh my gosh, is his story good. That's Gateway. That's by Frederick Pohl. That ending, man. Whew. It jolted me for like 2 weeks. He's not well, he does bad things. At the end, he does something heroic, but because of his heroism, he struggles with survivor's guilt. And actually you can write anti-hero characters. Like, oh, this guy's not a good guy. But you could still reason, you could still relate. Like the guy for Gateway, he does bad things, he thinks bad things. He has a huge amount of issues, psychological problems. He's not he's in a way he's not fun to be with. But what gravitated me toward his story was I was feeling his fear. I was feeling his guilt. There was something so tactile, so visceral about his experience. Like, wow. I couldn't read a book like that all the time. I have to read those books in doses. He's not a very good guy, but he does something good in the end, and then because of that, he has to overcome a lot of guilt, a lot of guilt, survivalist guilt. All right, continuing on down. It's almost 7. All right. There are some things that you guys are saying that I don't really have context, because I don't know all the stories, especially concerning like Justice League or anything. Right now, I'm just exploring Batman's own story. Um, it'll be Superman's own story. Not the team yet. Eldridge Fan says Harry McDowell from Gungrave, is that how you pronounce it? Is an excellent he is a great villain protagonist. There's always two protagonists, and they start out as best friends. Yeah, I think you can make it a protagonist, a villain, and just follow the villain story. It's not the best story to follow. But again, like Prof was reading. I was reading Darth Plagueis, loved it. We were following two villains the whole time, but it's so interesting, so interesting. But at the same time, I never had any sympathy toward Darth Plagueis. I never had any sympathy, even with the abusive relationship that Palpatine had with his father. I still never had sympathy toward Palpatine. I knew he was evil. Evil was so well done. It was so well written. You're not sympathetic toward these villains. With Big Al and Professor Geek a year or so ago, they did the Darth Bane trilogy. I listened in. I didn't read the stories, but I'm like, dang, like these are wicked, wicked creatures. They're wicked characters, and so you can follow someone's line. I mean, even with the Revan story that I had just recently read, Lord Scourge is a Sith, or he's an up and coming Sith. I mean, and he's not. There's no. There's the smallest amount of I wouldn't say redeemable traits, but there are some with his interaction with Revan. He at least admires Revan, even if he doesn't like Revan. For Revan's stoicism in the Force, his ability in the Force, his ability to take long periods of imprisonment and all that. So he kind of has likable traits as a bad guy, Lord Scourge has. And then something happens, and then dang, Lord Scourge's end is rough. It's rough. I wasn't expecting it. I was like, oh, that's rough. And that's the other thing too. If the villains are going to go down as villains, they should have, if they're not going to, outlive the second story, or the second installment, they should have some rough ends too. EU is not shy with having some pretty scary ends for the villains, that's for sure. But anyway. All right, Andres is kind of talking amongst, I think, Sparty Rules and Samuel Proctor on stuff that, there's something for me from Spidey Rules. Let's see. You say when Simon Peter maimed the high priest's servant by cutting off his ear, Jesus chastised him and said the famous quote, "He who lives by the sword shall die by the sword." Yeah, there's and there's kind of a ruthlessness about cutting someone's ear off. I mean, if you ever saw The Passion of the Christ by Mel Gibson, I mean that scene is played out, and it's horrible. It's horrible looking. You really feel for that servant. Yeah. Oh, Prof says I don't deserve my aspirational bride. I always hope to be. That's the thing, is I always aspire to be the best woman I can be. Best wife I can be. Oh, that's right. Okay, so Spider Girl says Lord Farquaad is the main villain of the first Shrek movie. I saw that movie a long time ago. I probably wouldn't remember the references, but yeah, exactly. Yes, thank you. 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 So the doctor says to Captain America, and forgive me, I forget the doctor's name. Let me see if I can remember his accent. No matter what happens tomorrow, promise me you'll remain who you are. Not a great soldier, but a good man. Oh, those scenes are timeless. I've only seen that scene once too, by the way, and I remember the room. I remember them sitting on the beds. I remember that earnest voice, where he has that pressing need to say, "You need to remain a good man." And guess what? Until the very end of Endgame, Steve Rogers is a good man. He remains a good man throughout. It's great. Awesome. What about Ender's Game? Ender's Game. Are you talking about the books or the movie? The books okay, I saw the movie once, and I can't quite remember how it's played out. Ender's Game is a very complex story of a very complex character. Fourth Age, good to see you. Thank you. Well, we're talking about heroes, Fourth Age, so good to have you. Sorry you can't stay, but see you later. Thanks for coming. Eldridge fan says, Ender's Game. Um, okay, so okay. I read the first book, Ender's Game, read Speaker of the Dead, and I've read I think it's called what was it called? I always forget the name of that third book. Xenocide? Xena Xena Oh my goodness. I need to look this up. Ender's Game book series. I'll always forget. Orson Scott Card novel series. Let's see if I see that. Ender's Game, Speaker for the Dead. Where is that third book? Yeah, Xenocide. Yeah. I didn't read Children of the Mind. I think that's the fourth installment. Um yeah, from what I remember, I do recommend the first two books, Ender's Game and then Speaker for the Dead. Ender is a very interesting character. I actually need to reread that book to I would you know what? I probably should reread that book and do a character analysis of Ender. He is a boy who has everything just thrown at him from very vicious systems. And there's something that happens to him where he believes he's doing something. He gets a little ruthless. He actually, in a way to survive, the school he's in, so to speak, and out in space, he kind of has to be ruthless because he is not going to survive. Like his ruthlessness, in some ways, comes out of self defense, and he has to outwit people and things and games in a very ruthless way. And he's like 6 at the time. I think he's 6 or 7 when the books take place, and it's not fair. Like you see him scream. Well, you're kind of through you're looking at his surgery through the eyes of like 2 doctors or whatever, kind of speculating him, and they rip out his chip, and he's screaming as a boy, and it's just awful. It's just ruthless. I hate it. But he wants to make right for the wrong he's done, especially with Speaker of the Dead or Speaker for the Dead. I think is it Speaker of the Dead or for the Dead? I can't remember. Um, but then he has a very smart sister who loves him, but does different things. And he has a very sadistic older brother that he tries to avoid at all costs. What happens with his brother is a very interesting premise. Peter is his name. And I like what happens with his brother. His brother just pretty much becomes this hegemon of sorts in the later books of the whole world, I think. At least he's a leader. He's almost kind of like the Antichrist, if you will. Like he's very sadistic, but beloved by the world, because people don't know his true sadistic nature. Ender and his sister Valentine know of his really twisted, really sociopath. He's like a sociopath. He's a wicked character. Ender is trying to outmaneuver him, outmaneuver the system, outmaneuver the tactics of the school, outmaneuver presumptually this alien race trying to attack Earth. And he realizes over the years the wrong he's done, and he wants to make right with the second book. And he really wants to redeem a very unlikable woman in the next book. And then these very unlikable children, and well, no, the children have potential, but then in the third book they're so unlikable. There's no character growth, there's no character arc. Um, Ender, unfortunately, I wish it wasn't so. I will say I like Ender's character in the first 2 books, but really in the third book, he really becomes he's walked all over. He has no backbone. In the pursuit of being good, he becomes very, very wishy-washy. So he loses his spine. He loses his backbone in the pursuit to becoming good. So his motives are good. But then he has people in trying to redeem one woman and then her children, and becoming kind of that surrogate father and then ultimately a stepfather, he kinda just has them walk all over him. He does eventually redeem all of them. The woman becomes almost this saintly, chaste figure, and I'm just gonna say it outright. He marries her, and then she becomes like this saintly, chaste woman who pursues this good religion. I can't remember, but in pursuing the religion, she wants to be celibate, and he's like, "I didn't sign up for this." He's like, "I married you. I kinda want," you know? And so, I thought that was funny in kind of a sad way. So she is redeemed. She becomes a lot more likable, but then in the 3rd book, they kind of regress. They're still good, but then they kind of regress. They're very annoying. They're very annoying. And his brother, at this point in the series, meets him in this hyper technological, hyper almost dimensional way. It's very weird. It's very woo-woo magic. And maybe it's explained in the 4th book. I forgive that to an extent, but he's he has no spine. Ender has no spine in dealing with his brother in the 3rd book. He's kinda like a woe is me. I'm too old, I'm out of shape, I don't have the intellectual capacity. He kinda relies on his girl computer, like his computer assistant. I'm like, "Dang." Like, so so the trajectory of Ender, at least in my memory of Ender, I liked the first 2 books. I really wish in pursuing good, he stays good, but he has that backbone. He repents of his wrongdoing because he does. He actually repents of this. He pretty much unwittingly. I don't want to say the twist if you read the game, but he sees what he's done and he's devastated by it. He wants to make right of the wrong he's done in the 2nd book. And I like him for that. He's great, but when he gets older, in pursuit of being good and saintly, he loses his backbone. So I really wish Orson Scott Card kept his backbone intact while pursuing good. So being good, pursuing good does not mean being wishy-washy and having people walk all over you. Yeah. So as an Eldridge fan, without spoiling it, Ender is kind of full of self-loathing, and that self-loathing kinda, if I remember correctly, does come up a little bit in the 1st book, but, oh, he's just trying. Like, there are bullies in the school that are out to kill him. So he kinda has to be ruthless, just he's ruthless in self-defense, but that's all. Um Well, I have to, I might reread Ender's Game. I might listen to it because I would like to do a character study of Ender. He's a very interesting sci-fi character, and I think everyone who's interested in sci-fi should at least read the 1st book. Yeah, very interesting, very interesting. Yeah, Samuel Proctor says the end of Ender's Game is it's crazy. Yeah, so I don't wanna spoil it. The movie, I liked the world per se of the movie. I thought it was an okay adaptation. I don't remember being as uh it wasn't as compelling to me as the book. And the world in my mind of Ender's Game and that school, that space station, that's the school, is it doesn't look as shiny as it does in the movie, but I like it. Like I have a well, actually no, that's not true. When Ender walks through those walkways, I pictured exactly that in the book. So there's that. Anyway, that was actually a really good stream. We're getting to the 90-minute mark, so I think I might just wrap it up. That was great. That was so fun to talk about I hoped you guys liked it. It was really fun. So yeah, anyway, so I think we'll end it there. Just a couple minutes of saying what's what. So for the month of January, I do have has my collar been crooked this whole time? Whatever. Dang, that's gonna bother me now. What was I saying? So what's on the dock for January? I've got 4 Super Collider videos in the queue to publish every Monday. So tomorrow you'll see the first of probably a 7 to 8 part series of Super Collider. I'm going to be working with dynamic expression, dynamic amplitude in Super Collider, and there's a point to it, and it's really exciting. So I hope to really do that. Oh, did you send a super chat, Andreas Hernandez? Sorry. Did I miss it? Oh, right there. I'm so sorry. Don't you feel bad? Plagueis got killed by a guy named Sheev. But is his name Sheev though? Yeah. So sorry that I missed your super chat there. Thanks for putting that in. Yeah. Let's see. Tima says I missed a little. Enjoyed what I heard so far. I hope so. Yeah, yeah. I thought this was a great stream. I didn't think how I would say much, but I certainly did. um, yeah. Samuel agreed. I think Ender's Game, the movie, really rushed the book's plot. I would say read the book. Read the book before watching the movie. You might not even get the world. You really might not get the world because the psychology in all the children, especially Ender, but a little bit with Valentine in relationship to her brother Peter and their parents. It's weird. It's good though. So if you want anti-heroes or at least people really in the gray, Peter's a villain. Ender has to overcome a lot of odds. Valentine is a compassionate, caring character for her brother, especially. She hates her older brother, Peter, but she tries to thwart Peter. She has her own intellect, different from her 2 brothers, but her own intellect, and it's played out really nicely in the book. So I would highly recommend the book. I might reread it. I might hear it on an Audible or listen to it. Because I like to. I remember it being good. So anyway, yeah, Ender's Game is good. Read the first book at least. Read the first book and then maybe the second book. Xenocide, it's interesting, but yeah. Anyway, I got mad. I got mad at a lot of the characters. So anyway, going back to what I was saying. So Super Collider will be every Monday this month, posted at noon. So you're gonna get a Super Collider video tomorrow. I will have a commentary video the next Friday. I guess people like the commentary videos. I'm posting commentary videos every Friday, at least this month. We'll see. And so that should be interesting. Talked about a mindset not being a strategy the last time. This topic is I can't remember. Oh, can you learn too much? Can you learn too much? And I'll just give you a little tease. The answer is yes. So that will be the commentary next time. So there is that. But oh, yeah, I think that's everything. So yeah, I think that's everything. So thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and I will catch you next time. See you later.